Crypto Caesar Capital. Hope you're well. It's the 22nd of November 2025, and we're going to do a video on Bitcoin and the market in general. I'm sorry that I've been offline for a few weeks, but unfortunately I got the flu and then I got pneumonia, and that sucked, and that kind of took me out for a few weeks. But I'm back. Yesterday was the first day that I felt better. I felt even better today, so that's positive. I've not gone anywhere. I was just taking a breather to get better again. So let's take a look at the market. So the big question is, right, there are two possibilities, okay? Possibility number one is the top is in, and we are now going to enter into a bear market, which will probably resolve itself at some point in 2026, probably towards the latter end of 2026, Q3, Q4. Or the other possibility is that this is just simply a drawdown in a latter cycle or latter part of the cycle. This is the sort of final drawdown before the big move to the upside. So let's look at both of those possibilities. Okay, let's look at the first one, that the top is in. Okay, so let's take, for example, the top is in. You want to preserve some capital. You want to try and trade this cycle, and you want to get out and wait for the cycle low to come. Okay, well, firstly, what we could say is that the RSI on the weekly is super oversold. I mean, we are talking sort of, COVID limits of RSI oversold. For example, we've got here the low in November 2022. RSI was about here, about 34. That's pretty much where the RSI is now. Going back to, let's have a look at COVID. I think that was the COVID low here, about 3.9 for Bitcoin. Back in March 2020, RSI was 34. Same reading on the RSI. So the RSI is at extreme levels, okay? And that suggests to me that at some point, the sellers are going to become exhausted one way or the other, okay? And this is on the basis, of course, that we're saying, or we're taking the idea that the cycle top is in. What I would not do right now is sell my Bitcoin position, because the sellers are becoming close to being extremely exhausted, if not already exhausted. So what I would do is I would wait for a bounce. It's a matter for you what you do, but that's what I would do. And really, the bounce is going to be the most important thing, because if it's a dead cat bounce, then you've got confirmation then that we're entering into a bear market. But also on that dead cat bounce, you've got the ability to offload your position at a better sort of cost basis than you are currently in now. And what's quite interesting about Bitcoin and 200-day moving average is that in every bear market cycle, Bitcoin has always come back to test the 200-day. So it's broken down through the 200-day, and then it's come back to test it. So example one is here. Okay, so Bitcoin was topped out in November 21 at about sort of 69K. It dropped down to 33K, so a fairly large drop of, I don't know, 50% or something. Let's have a look. 49%. And then there was some form of relief rally, okay, and then it came back up to test the 200-day SMA. It was about 48K at that point. That was your point to get out the market. That's where a lot of people in our group got out the market last time, and then or last cycle, and then it came down to make its final low. So you can see here, taken away the scribbling, it broke down below the 200-day SMA, and then it came back up to test it, got rejected. That was the confirmation that the bear market's in. That was the B move in the ABC correction. That was the point to start shorting, or that was the point to start offloading your position, and then down for the low. Similar thing happened back in 2018. Bitcoin dropped down below the 200-day smooth moving average from 19K all the way down to about 7K. Then it came back up to test it, about 10K, rejection, and then continued down into a bear market. Let's have a look. Cycle previous. Forgive me. Again, here, finding its high at $1,153, then breaking down, then coming up to test the 200-day SMA. So top, breaking down, coming back up, testing. So that's something that seems to be inherently sort of cyclical for Bitcoin. So for me, looking at where we are now, and of course this is on the basis that we are saying that the top is in, which is quite possible. I'm giving it 50-50 at the moment because I'll explain why in a moment. But so we got the 200-day SMA at 110. If you actually look at it now, it's starting to slope downwards. Okay, it's not sloping upwards. So this is a 200-day trend. It's kind of telling us that, you know, things are looking exhausted. Okay, it's rolling over. But we're currently, or the 200-day is currently around about 110, 111K, depending on which way you look at it. But it's around 110, 111K. Chances are there's probably going to be some form of bounce. This might take a few weeks, even months to play out. You know, it could take all of December into January potentially. By which point it's going to be sloping a bit more. Maybe it might be at 107K at that point. But the point is this: once it gets to the 200-day SMA, and if it rejects at that point, then that is your sort of confirmation that you should be looking to either de-risk, offload everything, or you know, be cautious around the position. If it starts to blast through it, then that could be your confirmation that actually, no, we're all good, and we're pushing forward. To another all-time high. I think for me, it's all about the velocity of the move and how quickly that happens. I mean, for example, if we are testing the 200-day SMA in, like, you know, at the beginning of December, in a couple of weeks' time or so, 2 or 3 weeks' time, then I think that could be a sort of sign that there's a bit of strength entering the market. Very much depends how long it takes, what the velocity is of the move, etc. But if it's sort of creeping up towards it like a limp sort of dog with one leg, and just about gets to it, I think that's not a good sign. But if it's really moving or pushing hard with velocity, then that might be a different matter. But the point is this, okay? 10 times out of 10, well, not 10 times out of 10, but every time in history, the last 3 cycles, Bitcoin has always come back to test the 200-day moving average before then rejecting and going off into its bear phase. So what we could take from that is that, you know, it's probably, for me, not worth offloading anything at the moment, but waiting for that bounce and to see how convincing that bounce is and whether it's going to reject off the 200-day or not. Because, of course, you're better off offloading a position at 107K, 110K, whatever it might be, 104K, even 100K, rather than 84K. Now, let's take a look at the levels, okay? Now, we've essentially got this trend here where we have the low here, and then we have a higher low made here in March 23, then another higher low here in September 23, then another one, a small one in February 24, then a long period of consolidation with another low here in August 24, then this low. Now, that was a high low, so we've got a trend. This is sort of the basic bull market trend where you've got higher lows, consolidation, higher lows, consolidation, higher lows, all very good. But now really, we've got to be realistic here, because we've got this higher low which was made back in April 25, which is, depending on whether you're going to count the wick or not. Some people don't like counting the wick because they say that's just noise. Some people might say it's 77K. Some people might say it's 74K. But the long and short of it is that this is a pretty sort of significant level, because we've got this area which was huge resistance for a long time, 34 week, 238 days. And then we've got this low here at 74K in April 25. So this is a significant area, whether it's 73K or 77K, whichever way you want to put it. But this general area is of quite significance. But let's just say 77K, that's what some classical chartists might say is in fact the low or the high low. So really it's a question of Bitcoin remaining above this area, because if it breaks down below this area, it's broken the continued higher low structure. So the bull trend has been broken. So really Bitcoin really needs to remain above 77K. That would be a complete break of structure if it broke down through 77. That would be not only a weekly break of structure, but a monthly break of structure as well. Because if you look at it on the monthly, it's pretty much the same kind of level. In fact, I mean, if you're taking the wick out of the question, it's sort of 81K, which Bitcoin is managing to hold at the moment. So for me, a monthly close below 81K or a weekly close below sort of 77 would not be a good look, to be quite frank. But we're on a sort of a knife's edge at the moment. And the market likes to test us. It really does like to take us to the cliff or the knife edge before it turns. But those are the levels. And if we are in a bear market trend now, so if Bitcoin has rolled over, which is quite possible. I'm not going to sit here and be ultra bullish. I'm a realist, okay? And there is a distinct possibility, a good 50% possibility, that we are now rolling over and going into a bear trend. But really, it's about this level. It's about 77. It's about 81, and seeing how Bitcoin closes the month, how Bitcoin closes this week. Because if it closes, let's say, for example, that final wick to 80 was it, which is quite possible if you look at the extremities of the RSI on the weekly and the daily and the 3-day and the 5-day and pretty much every time frame from the weekly. It's telling me that buyers are at the point of being extremely exhausted. But what we have to remember as well is, and this is something I tell my group all the time, that the RSI can remain overbought or oversold longer than a trader can remain solvent. So we can't just base a decision purely on the RSI, but what we can do is we can look at that evidence and we can take that way as something factual and say, well, sellers are probably close to being exhausted at this point. But then it's just a question of how strong the buyers are when they return. So that's that's where we are with the potential of this being a bear market trend. And if we are in a bear market trend, then Bitcoin is probably going to bottom out sometime in Q4 2026. So a year from now, if the 4-year cycle holds, which, you know, as it stands, it's looking like it is. Okay. Now, let's consider the possibility that, in fact, we are in a bull market. Okay, because that, again, I think is entirely possible. I'm giving it a 50% chance here. So I'm 50-50 at the moment. But, you know, as I said, these levels are really, really important for me. But I think we're going to get a bit of a bounce. Now, let's consider this on the basis of the bull market still on. Now, number one is a lot of people misunderstand 4-year cycles. A lot of people seem to think that it's something to do with the halving. It has zero to do with the halving. A oscillation of a cycle begins at a bottom and ends at a bottom. Okay, so when a cycle bottoms out, that is the death of one cycle and the birth of a new cycle. The peaks have got really nothing to do with it, okay? It's just a bit of a coincidence, really, that the peaks have come in around about 4 years, in my view, with Bitcoin. Because if you look at the S&P 500, the S&P 500 went through 4-year cycles for quite a long time. And I think Ben Cohen pointed that out, which I think is actually quite an interesting piece of evidence. But my point is this, is that every 4 years, Bitcoin has bottomed out from its low, from its previous cycle low to its previous cycle low. So this was the first cycle low in January 15, and it bottomed out in December 18, about, you know, 205 weeks later. 208 weeks is 4 years, so around about 4 years. So end of one cycle, beginning of a new cycle takes place, cycle ends 4 years later, bottom to bottom. And again, the bottom in 2018 to the low in 2022 was 207 bars, so a week away from 208 bars, which is 4 years. So you see my point. The birth of a new cycle, the death of an old cycle, etc., it takes 4 years. So it's quite possible that the 4-year cycle hasn't yet peaked, and we could have one more push through December into January, possibly could even go sort of into April. Who knows? But the point is this: it doesn't matter where it tops out, as long as it bottoms out in December or Q4 2026. So it's quite possible we could have a big move which could take us into, you know, December, January, February, March, and then it could start bottoming out, and then it could roll over, and it could really, as you've seen, how quickly something can turn, how quickly Bitcoin can turn, then it could turn and make it cycle low in December or, you know, Q4 2026, and then bottom out, and then start finding its trend to the upside again. So the 4-year cycle isn't dead, okay? There are extreme readings on the RSI, which I've pointed out already, but we'll take a look at them again. So we've got an RSI at 34, okay? The last time the RSI was this low, we were in fact at the cycle low in 2022. Previous to that, it was the COVID low in March 2020, and previous to that, it was the low in December 18, and again the low in December or January 2015. So we are at, you know, significant extremities of an oversold RSI. And also, which suggests to me there's either going to be a bounce or there's going to be a really violent move to the upside which causes a new all-time high. Okay. Also, interestingly, if you actually measure the move from sort of high to low, it's a 35% correction, which in fact isn't unusual for corrections in bull markets for Bitcoin. You know, you've seen all the charts on Twitter, you know, and in this cycle, you know, we've been having corrections of 30%. That was a correction of 30%. We had another correction of 31% there. I think this was a correction of about 20 odd. Yeah, 21, 22%. So this is in the realms of a normal correction for Bitcoin. So there is that as well. So there is a lot open to debate really at the moment. I don't really think you could say either way for sure what is happening here. But going back to my first point, if the cycle high is in, then I think there is a really good chance that Bitcoin is going to revisit the 200-day SMA, which at the moment is around about 110, 111K, or either, depending on where the 200-day SMA is when Bitcoin revisits it, could be here at this higher low made in August 25 of 107, quite possible, or it could be a bit lower. It could be sort of around this area of 100K. But I would say that, you know, it's likely to be somewhere in here at the top of here, 107 down to 101, depending on how quickly we get there as well. So for me, I'm still holding my position, and it'll be a question then when we get back up into this box, what I do and how Bitcoin has got there, whether it's struggled there like a three-legged dog or whether it's galloped there like, you know, a top-notch racehorse. If it's galloped there like a top-notch racehorse, then I think there's a good argument to say that it's going to probably bust through it and we're going to go to new all-time high. If it's struggled there like a three-legged poodle, then chances are probably that's going to take a little bit longer and the slope would have come in a little bit more, and it's time to start offloading your position. A bit like, as I pointed out, 2021 here, when Bitcoin got to 47K, 2022, sorry, there, April 22. Okay, struggled there, didn't it? Like a three-legged poodle. Whereas here in 2021, it whipped up like a racehorse. Yeah, that was way more convincing. In fact, it pierced through it, didn't it? And then came down, tested it, and then went again. So takeaways, really. We'll look at total and Bitcoin dominance, but takeaways at the moment are, you know, it's quite possible the top is in. It's quite possible the top's not in. So I'm just going to hold out and wait to see what the position is. I don't really think that it's a great idea for me at the moment to be selling any Bitcoin when the RSI is at extreme levels of COVID and previous bottoms and cycles. I think that's probably not the greatest of ideas. But as I said, you know, the RSI can remain oversold or overbought longer than a trader can remain solvent. But it's a matter for you, but that's just my view, my opinion. Now, looking at Bitcoin dominance is just sitting there, not really doing much, sitting around about the support area. If the top is in, then this is going to be the strangest cycle ever for altcoins, because really altcoins haven't done a huge amount. Some of them have done okay. Some of them haven't done great. I mean, Ethereum's done okay, but hasn't done great. So this is another reason why I think potentially there's a good argument that we've still got, you know, maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months, maybe, you know, December and Q1 for a bull market rally for Bitcoin dominance to at least come down to 48%. But I suppose there is the argument that Bitcoin dominance will naturally drop anyway during a cycle, during a bear cycle, this time round, because stable coins are such a huge market capitalization in this market now, and everyone will go into stable coins. So there's that sort of argument. But generally speaking, Bitcoin dominance tends to go up during bear markets rather than down. But then, we've got to factor in the stablecoin market and the breadth and the sort of size of the stablecoin market now. But, it is what it is. So this is total one. So this is a total market capitalization of crypto. And as you can see, it is right on the area of coming back to test this high back all the way back in November 21. So it's, it breached through it, came back down, up, and now it's retesting this area. So as it stands, everything seems to be intact at the moment for the total crypto market cap. But don't get me wrong, we are on a knife's edge here. We are on the edge of a cliff. So it's just a question of whether we get pushed over the edge or whether we turn around and start marching back towards, the land. But let's see what happens. But interestingly, again, for the total crypto market cap, we've got an RSI which is in extremities of being, super oversold. Same as the Bitcoin chart, really. We've got the low here, which was a reading of 32. RSI is at 36. Then we have the COVID low, which was here, RSI reading of 34. That's exactly where, excuse me, exactly where the RSI was in a COVID low. And then we've got the reading of the December 2018 bottom, which was slightly lower, but we are in that range. That this is an extremely oversold environment, and that is why for the time being I'm going to remain in position and see how Bitcoin reacts over the next few weeks and months. So that's where we are, guys. Excuse me. Things don't look that great at the moment, but that's how the markets are when we have big pullbacks. Everybody gets scared. If you look at the Bitcoin Fear and Greed Index or the Crypto Fear and Greed Index, it's been fear for a long time now. But we've got to be realistic. We've got to say to ourselves, this could be the beginning of a bear market trend, which would make absolute sense. Bitcoin's topped out around about where it's always topped out. And if that's the case, then we've got to preserve capital. Okay, we're not going to sit this out. Nobody wants to sit a long bear market out. So it's a question then of when are you going to offload your position? Are you going to offload your position now when the RSI is at 34? Or are you going to offload your position when the RSI bounce back and comes up least to say 50 and the price is around about sort of, here? That's probably the better place to offload a position because, you're going to be 30% better off than you would be if you did it now. So that's the way I see it. I'm not all doom and gloom. I still have at least 50% of me looking at this from a positive viewpoint, but also we've got to be realistic, okay? And being realistic is a good thing because it makes you or ensures that you preserve your capital. But I'm just going to wait it out for the time being and see where we go. We've had a really quite violent sell-off. And in my view, I think the sellers are close to being, if not already exhausted. But let's just keep an eye on those levels, 78, 81, kind of important levels. But we'll see where we go. All right. So that's where we are. That's the video for today. If you want to join the group, check out the link in the description, www.cryptocaesarcapital.com. You can either reach out to us on via the website, or you can reach out to me on Twitter. We will help you in this difficult phase of the market. and like and subscribe. Thank you very much for all of the DMs and the positive comments I've been getting about me getting back on my feet, which I really appreciate, and it's nice to feel the love from the crypto community. And we'll do another video soon. We'll do another video maybe in a week or two, see where we are with the price at that point. But yeah, let's just hold on in there. If you've already taken profit and you're waiting, then that's a position that you've decided to take, which is fine, depending on, of course, where you took profit. But best thing to do now is just hold it out and wait, see what this market's got for us over the next few weeks and month. All right, take care. Thank you very much for listening, and I shall speak to you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.